Good afternoon, everybody. This is Carmen Rojas with the Rojas Consulting Group and the Camel Jacket Chat. Here we are today. We are having a special show today. I have some wonderful, wonderful guests who I've been very, very excited about having on the show. And we'll just kind of go from what's left to right on my film strip. And we're starting with Miss Delilah Taylor. Everybody knows her around Google Plus as the monogamous temptress. We also have Dennis Deuce here in the middle, who is one of our favorite guys, hosting several different shows and always busy on there. And I'll let him talk about what he's up to. And then, of course, we also have Mani Saint-Victor, MD, who is our resident neuroscientist, who's going to tell us everything that's wrong with us today. So
and right.
So it may be a long show.
Yeah, you've got me as a guest this week. So everybody sit down and strap in. We're going to be here for about 8 hours.
All right. But today's show, we wanted to talk about how do we manage personal relationships through entrepreneurship. One of the things that I know I've personally found to be a surprising challenge is how do you keep the people that you love in your corner as you move through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And so we're going to talk about, in your marriage, in your romantic relationships with your sisters and brothers, with your grandparents, with your friends from high school, all the people that you want to keep in your circle and the people that you want to celebrate your successes with. How do you keep those people on the same page with you? So we're going to go ahead and get started with that, but let everyone just do a little more verbose introduction. So Delilah, you're up.
All right. Hi, everybody. I know I've been singing around a bit. Call me the monogamous temptress. I do relationship coaching. I started that a number of years after my husband and I almost split up, and we managed to come back together. Have a blog at monogamous-temptress.com. Have studied areas in medicine and psychological and spiritual, and I'll be happy to answer anything.
Excellent. All right, Dennis, your turn.
Well, I came on last minute, and thank you, Carmen, and I'm here to talk about these. I am doing something together with Greg Trujillo and Carolyn Capern. We're trying to test out how we can use Google Plus as a tool to both increase awareness and raise money at the same time for charities. We're calling it Plus My Charity. We have a page. Please circle us, follow us. But tonight I'm going to be walking a mile in these shoes to support Harbor House, domestic violence. So I think in line with today's subject, definitely not hurting someone physically is probably a really good way to get them to support you. Just saying.
For sure.
I imagine that's
a great starting point.
I think that's pretty safe. All right, Doc, you're up.
All right. I'm Dr. Manuel Saint-Victor. I'm Mani Scienide on the internet, Dr. Poison. I worked at Mindful 360, where we focus on non-pathological approaches to getting to build a sense of self, getting to know you, and working in your relationship, working more effectively with your teams through effective communication, as well as helping organizations understand neurodiversity and develop empathy, not just as a buzzword.
Excellent. All right. Well, I want to get us started. There's a couple of comments that came in from the audience. Excuse me. Get my words together today. I was out partying with Eric Enga last night, and I'm just not coming around. He had a hurl last night out in here in New England, so forgive me. But anyways, I want to start off over here. Miss Jenna Christofferson, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, says she writes fantasy fiction, and most of my family and friends are getting me to face reality. They just don't understand. And I wanted to start with that one because her situation is interesting because what she does is fantasy. It's not real. But at the same time, it's very, very real to her because it's her passion, it's her, her emotion being poured out in this way. And so I imagine it's painful. Your people, tell her she's not being real or she's not facing reality. So what would you guys, we'll start with Delilah, how would you recommend that she approach her family and friends and try and get them on board with this?
First off, by facing reality, does that mean that they're trying to get you to quit writing and go into the regular job thing? Is that where that's going? Because, or is it because of the fact that you write fantasy fiction, which I happen to love fantasy fiction? Are they trying to get you to write more of the reality type stuff? And then there's other sides of it we all have to face, such as how long have you been doing this? Is there some sort of sideline that you can do? Are they wanting you to make money, or are you not making any? Have you not had any in a while? Is that where that's going? There's so many options that go along with it. It's difficult to answer. By all means, do not stop writing. Because if nothing else, it's for you. That's it. That's where your creative side comes. That's where you pour your heart into everything. And for me, I love doing so much with the people that I work with, and then I also have my business side where I'm writing on my blog, I'm on Hangouts and everything else, that it comes to a point where my family's like, well, you're spending all your time doing this, but you're not spending enough with us. And it may be that also. She may be pouring so much into the writing that she's forgetting to take that time and be with the family.
That's a good point. And speaking of family, we'll let Dennis jump in here. Coming from, being an entrepreneur, and would it be fair to call you a serial entrepreneur, Dennis?
I'm a serial something.
Lucky Charm. No.
Oh.
We're going to call you a serial entrepreneur, and with a family, a growing family as yours, that's large. How do you balance it all? How do you feed your passion and keep up with this family?
A friend of mine, Jeb Blunt, who wrote some really good books on sales and marketing and interpersonal relationships, explained the balance side of this in a way that really made some sense to me. We all talk about trying to be in balance like it's this thing, like sitting on this chair, I'm in balance, but that's not it at all. Balance is far more like walking on a tightrope. And in order to walk on a tightrope successfully, it takes every muscle in your body and constant adjustment and constant moving, and you need to constantly be aware of it. So I don't claim to be ever perfectly in balance. I try my best to shift and adjust and pay attention to the feedback that's coming to me from my family, from those around me, and make adjustments as necessary in order to have some semblance of balance. But it's a bit of a delusion that you can actually be there. Life, especially for an entrepreneur with 8 kids, living in 4 households, well, because one of them has moved out already. 2 have moved out. Oh my gosh, I can't even keep up anymore. And yeah, but there's just a lot to balance in there, and it really takes a concerted effort to pay attention to what's going on. And Cheryl would probably chime in about this point and say that I don't do a good job at it, but that's probably true. I try, though.
Well, Cheryl did chime in briefly, and she says, our family is not growing anymore. So I think I love Cheryl's point. That's a good thing for you guys too. So
yeah, well, the 8 kids are getting bigger still. Well, some of them aren't. because they're old enough. But yeah, no, there won't be other kids.
What's the age range?
22 to 6.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, that is fun. All right, doctor. How do you want to jump in and advise our young lady who's writing fiction? We're getting some great comments in the room, but I want to give you a crack as well.
I take these kind of things with sort of a unified personality style approach, where each person has a point of view and how they see the world, and it's important for each of us to define our psychic boundaries. And in a relationship, you're sharing psychic boundaries with someone else, where each of you has a set of views of the world, and ideally as a unit you're not encroaching on the other person's view, so that both of you can have the best life together possible. Now once you become that unit, if you're healthy about it, like in my case, I try to be clear with my wife, as I try to first of all understand her need for structure, stability and safety, and to know that the family's okay, but at the same time I have this drive to go beyond just the traditional medical practice, just the traditional lifestyle. And to me, a successful life at the end would not be just I've taken care of people and I've done whatever. Being a doctor was not my vision of success. My vision of success was actually helping a lot of people understand mental health, understand their thought process, and live a better life without HMOs limiting who I can see. And so that took sort of an entrepreneur approach. Now, when you're dealing with a relationship and with family, it becomes a whole different ball of wax, because now the two of you have to keep people out of your business. Okay, you want to create the type of dynamic where your relationship is aware of people's feedback, but that you're not arguing about other people's thoughts about something that's not really theirs to decide.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you're hearing your partner, because ideally you're paired up with someone that complements your skill set. Like I'm in ENTP, my wife is ESTJ, to use Jungian archetypes. That means I live for variety, creativity, the next thing. I like being in the moment. She likes the security of structure. And so ideally you create a situation where it's not chaotic and you're actually hearing the person tell you what they value and expressing your values so that they understand them. So by making them kind of conscious and clear and wording them, you're not talking at each other, you're talking to each other about sort of a shared vision of the end relationship.
Wow.
That wasn't too abstract.
Since you mentioned the Jungian approach and all of that, this is from our good friend Mr. Craig Calvert, who's your partner at Mindful 360, and he talks about the classic intuition versus sensing battle. So if you want to jump in and just kind of explain that a little bit so that people understand what he's talking about, and kind of bring in the whole Myers Briggs and the Jungian theory, so that we understand and we're with you there.
Okay, so two of your core functions, Myers Briggs breaks your universe into how you take in information, and then which are your perceiving aspects, and how you do stuff with that information, how you process and make decisions. On the perceiving end, you have your intuiting type and your sensing type. Your intuiting type, we get the gist of things, and like I said, I'm an ENTP. I spot patterns, and obviously when you spot patterns, your brain is like, well, this is going to happen next. So I live in the future. I live in the clouds, is what your sensing person would say. Whereas a sensing person, they like to rely on what has happened in the past, what has worked in the past, what are the numbers, what are the brass tacks. And so they might look at someone intuiting with the intuition preference and be like, well, you're kind of head in the clouds. Whereas we might tend to look at them and be like, well, you're too concrete. You can't see the big picture, which is right there. So what you want to do is you want to meet in the middle and keep your sensing type aware of where things fit in the context of the big picture. You want to point out that, okay, for milestone 1, we're going to do A, B, C, and D, but realize that I'm over at milestone 8 looking at the big picture. And you give them context so that they can relieve anxiety, because that's what personality is all about, kind of staying calm and managing stress. So you give them a big picture, how you see it, and you show how theirs fits into it, and that eventually you will get around to the details.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now, and I know you and I have had some conversations on the side with Craig and about how we can apply this kind of concept. And I don't want to dwell on it necessarily, but for the point of the conversation, what do most entrepreneurs, do you find, what would be some of their characteristic?
ENTP all day.
What are they?
At startups, you have a large majority of people with that idea type are ENTP. And what that means is we're perceiving type, as in we value the flexibility of adapting to the situation over the structure of doing things the way they've always been done. That's why we innovate. And intuitive type, as in we kind of look at a situation and we see the opportunity in the gist. And intuitive types also tend to think in the future tense, what's coming next, because patterns do that. Patterns make the predictive part of your brain more active. Now, your manager type, usually you're looking at an ESTJ, and the T is a thinking type, which is objective evaluation. They live in the models. And the S is the sensing type we were discussing. That's deadlines, meeting the requirements. Well, that combined with the judging aspect. And they can drop by the site, and we actually have a 4-video set free called Deep Dive, where we walk through deconstructing all the different personality types, because I don't want to just give it kind of short shift here. But each person has a way their brain is absorbing the universe, and a way that they're looking to see what is right. And empathy is realizing that someone is sitting across the room seeing an entirely different picture from you, and still accepting theirs as not being abnormal.
Interesting. Very. And Dennis, how do you think, being an entrepreneur, and your wife is a nurse, if I'm not mistaken, how do you guys kind of manage your differing viewpoints?
With a lot of communication. Yeah,
I'm putting you on the spot. You're talkative.
Well, we both look at the world very, very differently. I completely understood the things Manny was saying about seeing patterns and grasping. I mean, it's actually been a problem when I have had a job, because I see something someone is doing today, and I can see all of the ramifications, positive or negative, instantaneously. In fact, I wish I could shut it off at times. And then I start trying to bring these things up to keep the business going on the right course, and well, then I just become somebody's thorn in their side. And so, it's a challenge when you see the world that way, and yet Cheryl is far more security and concrete, and the concept of just jumping in and doing it scares the heck out of her, and she has learned to deal with it a little bit, and I try my best to try and bring it back to where she can understand. But I loved what Manny was saying, and plan on incorporating it right into our marriage, where I try and take it down to actual steps. These are the things we're trying to do, which is difficult for me to do. I mean, that's going to be a challenge, but I think if I spend the energy trying to figure out what those steps are for her, that will make what is honestly the most amazing marriage anyone could think of even better.
That's beautiful. Well, and that gives me an awesome segue into an offer that I was able to work out with the Mindful 360 gentlemen, Dr. Manny and Craig. And if you're wanting to know more information about this is the Myers Briggs Type Indicator. It is something that has so many applications. Lots of big Fortune 500 companies are using it. We're talking about it in a relationship context, and we're exploring other avenues to apply it. But if this is something you think would be helpful to you, and I can pretty much assume that it would be, you can actually go to the Mindful 360 website. When you get in touch with Dr. Mani or Craig, let them know that you came from the Camel Jacket Chat, and they are going to do a two-person, so partner Myers Briggs profile for you for only $95, something that would normally cost you about $200, I believe. So we were able to work that out special for all of our viewers here today. All you need to do is just make sure and tell them that you came from the Camel Jacket Chat. It needs to be, you guys will just schedule a session together, and they will assess you and tell you all this wonderful things. Are you an ENTP and they're, an IS something else? I don't know, memorize them all, but Manny does. And knowing this, knowing is half the battle, if not more than half the battle, I would assume. And so understanding how the two of you see the world, is an extremely valuable tool into how you will communicate together and move forward towards your goals. And that could be, we're talking in this case about, two people who are romantically involved, but it would be a good thing for a parent and a child, as long as they're over 16, to also have something similar done, so that you can learn how your child is perceiving the world, and how that relates to how you need to better parent. So there are lots and lots and lots and lots of applications for this type of thing. But I want to jump back over here to Delilah. So heads up, we're coming for you.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you, perhaps some specific, communication things. So, I wrote a blog this week about, and I kind of gave a little bit of a scenario where, the entrepreneur's been at home, they've been fighting with their website all day, they've, tried to rub the two nickels together in their bank account to pay a vendor off, and the spouse comes in and it's like, there are still breakfast dishes in the sink. There's the beds are not made, and the children haven't been, or whatever is going on, and they start rattling off a list. How would you recommend that they communicate through that? How does an entrepreneur communicate to a spouse, for example, what their life is really like, and why it is that, hey, dishes aren't made, dogs may not be fed. It happens.
Generally, I love dishes aren't made. That's awesome. Hashtag dishes aren't made.
The best way that I have found to do that is to start off with a schedule. Go ahead and every week my husband and I sit down every Sunday with each other, because he works a very oddball schedule at his job, and I'm here. But we schedule our time together. And then I also schedule time for getting the housework done. We schedule time for the kids to do their shares of the chores. Even though I'm an entrepreneur and I could be busy 24/7, I'm still going to live on a schedule, because during that time that he's home, that the kids are home, that's the time that I'm a wife and I'm a mom. And that's where a lot of people will run into problems, because they're like, well, I've got to get this website going, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. No, you've got to stop and love. You've got to spend that time with your family. And maybe during that time, if you're still doing something, bring them into what you're doing, because if it's causing a problem, one of the best things I ever did is have my husband on a hang out with me. A couple of them.
Because madness, that works.
Right, because then I've went to his job. He's shown me what he does. I've talked with the people that he works with. It's only right that he gets to do the same. And Dennis, I know your wife is on here all the time. She was on my show. I love your wife, but yeah. So instead of them feeling like you're doing something that's all secret and it's all yours and they can't touch it, make them, well, not make them, but bring them into it, maybe give them a small portion of it to help you handle the emails or things, and they feel like they're part of the team. It's not just all you, and it doesn't feel like it's just all you on your side either. You have help. You're not alone.
I would imagine that would help with what Dennis was saying as well, because then it becomes less of a he or she goes into that black box universe and promises at some point that unicorns are coming out. You know, because I think it's that feeling, that abstract of there's something over there I'm helpless to contribute to, out of my control, that I don't even know what it looks like when it's done. And ESTJs in particular, like when you tell them something is done, I'm like, well, I'm done. Is it done? What's done? I'm an ENTP. I'm gonna unwrap. I'm gonna pull the sweater string. Yeah, and I think what you said is a good way. The fact that you show a schedule kind of brings it closer to their way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my husband's phrases is "right now." No.
Right now when I'm ready.
Yes, right now. This moment, right now. I thought you meant later. No.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a man and a woman thing. Because men, when they say they're getting up and they're going to bed, you know what? They get up and they go to bed. Women, we get up, say we're going to bed, we're going to stop and do a dish or two first, we're going to grab something to drink, get a load of laundry started, because we're doing things along the way. We're multitaskers. Where men are more straightforward. So that may be where y'all having that little bit there going on.
That might be. And I wanted to bring up a comment from our good friend Cheryl, who she said, "Have I been in your house?" And I think this was the comment about coming home and dishes and stuff. And I wanted to bring it up because I've never been to your house, but I've been in my own. And I've seen the look on my husband's face when he comes in. You know, we have a 3-year-old that's at home with me most of the time during the day. There may be days her hair doesn't get done. She usually, I do make sure she gets her out of her pajamas. That's just my own personal thing. She's not going to be in her pajamas all day. But, you know, her hair may not get done. There still might be dishes in the sink. But you know what? I have blogged. I have followed up with leads. I have worked on business strategy things. I've had a hangout. I mean, I've done all this other stuff. But it's hard for him to understand it and see it in that kind of a way. So I appreciate that. And there's a couple of questions out here specifically for Dr. Mani here that I wanted to bring up. Sandra Watson, hello Sandra, is asking, do you think everyone is capable of seeing the patterns?
Absolutely. We're all born with the 8 cognitive functions, and we develop preferences. Your brain works purely on reward, avoid, and approach. So if something looks delicious, you approach it. And by delicious, I mean anything that appeals to your senses. You get better at differentiating. That's how some people can smell a wine, the bouquet, the lighting and stuff, and I'm like, will it make us giddy? You know, it's an expertise that you develop along the way. So in order to start picking up patterns, and that's where something like the Myers Briggs and Jungian archetypes come into play, you have to load into your intuition certain ways of looking at things. I'm trying to think of a good example. When I moved from traditional medical practice into sort of a play and living, thriving-based approach, one of the first things I had to break the habit of doing is putting people into diagnostic categories, because someone would come in and I'd be like, wow, that was bipolar. You know, I mean, because I have ICD-9s to do, and if you're not billable by the time I leave, then I've been running on a treadmill. You know, so I had to move to, instead of seeing illnesses in people, and this is where it's useful, you move away from your tendency to move to a quick cognitive closure. Yeah, and really the best example in our culture is stereotypes, where we're like Democrat, liberal, and once you see a first few parts of a pattern, you close in on that pattern. But if you can train yourself incrementally not to jump to that pattern and even label that person and withhold judgment, and that's a mindful activity, then you'll see other traits the person has. You don't create this magnet of confirmation bias. And that's how you start to see other more abstract patterns, by kind of letting go and letting the accumulation of evidence take place before you've made a decision. Because once you've decided, you're in. You're sticking to that, and you're going to find everything. Like, it's like when you buy a green car, suddenly everyone else has a green car.
And you know what? I realized I totally forgot to blue box you. But you made some really great points there. Sorry about that.
No problem. What's blue boxing?
It means the camera wasn't looking at you.
That's all good.
Yeah, the cameraman thing is not cooperating with me today, so I'm having to do it manually. And, hey, it's a little bit of the crazy, but that's all right. I had a question here from Mr. Ammon. I'm sorry, hope I'm saying it correctly. Ammon Johns. And it's a little long. It's not going to all show up on the screen, but if I can paraphrase for him, and he'll have to correct me if I'm doing it not accurately, but he's basically saying that it seems to him that the problem is not so much, that the entrepreneur is having trouble telling their partner, because most of us like to talk, but not a lot of us are good listeners. And that's kind of what he's seeing there, and he goes on, and if you want to read the full comment in the thread, then you certainly can. And absolutely, you have to, what's the phrase? You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so you can listen twice as much as you talk. And that's definitely a skill that I'm sure I could probably get better at, and my husband would probably agree. And Dennis, do you find that you're more the extrovert in between you and Cheryl, that you're more the talker and she's more the listener?
No.
Pretty balanced?
We're different in how we approach it. In the previous HOA that I was on, there was a conversation going on about how, I'm really comfortable in front of any group. I could speak, I don't care, 10,000 people in an auditorium, and I could stand up and I could speak extemporaneously without any preparation on just about any subject that I have knowledge on, and it wouldn't faze me. And at the same time, I'm really comfortable in small groups, 3, 5 people, 10 at the most. But you take me to like a networking event where I don't know anybody there, and I get really, really uncomfortable really quickly. Now, you put Cheryl in that event, and she just, she's like her mother, which is the hugest compliment I could pay to anybody. She goes into a restaurant and walks out best friends with the people in the booth behind us, and I would have never even realized they were there. So we just approach those social things very differently, but both of us are extroverts, just different about it. We both also talk a lot, as you can tell. I just did that.
Yeah. Carmen, one thing that Dennis brings up is when you break down, and I don't want to beat the Jungian archetypes to death, but when you look at the Myers Briggs style, there's something that you externalize and there's something that you internalize. Like as an ENTP, I internalize my models and I talk to people about the intuition part. Inside, I have a model, but I'm telling you the predictions and how it'll look, and it sounds like I'm like an epileptic flea or something, until I remember to tell the model part. Now, a lot of people in relationships, before they think about the 50% that they're not sharing, they're talking to each other and giving each other half the information, and then making jump extrapolative inferences from half the information they're getting. So each person has a part inside that is their internal model, and when you communicate to each other and you pause and you say, hey, you're doing the thing, I need why. And then on the other side, it's like where you're doing the thing where you're jumping past and trying to get to judgment before you have all the data. You kind of shift each other and use a system. Instead of attacking a person, you're attacking a way of communicating, and pulling yourself out of it instantly makes it that much better.
Very interesting. Real quickly here, we'll just kind of give a quick update for everybody. You are watching the Camel Jacket Chat with Carmen Rojas and the Rojas Consulting Group. We have joining us today Delilah Taylor, Dennis Deuce, and Dr. Mani Saint-Victor. We are discussing managing personal relationships as an entrepreneur. And so we're about halfway through the show. And for those of you who may have missed it earlier, if you go to mindful360.com, if you go down through the comments there, I know that Craig Calvert posted the link directly there. You can go to the website. We were talking a lot about Myers Briggs type indicator, but if you would like to explore more about it, you can find out more information there. And also, if you would like to have your type indexed, if I'm saying that correctly, then what you need to do is just let them know that Carmen Rojas sent you, that you watched the Camel Jacket Chat, and you and your spouse or whoever you're in a relationship with can get your type indexed for only $95. So it's 2 people, 1 session, 1 low price, $95. There we go. Okay, so we're going to jump back into this. And I wanted to ask Delilah a question, and this kind of talks here about, you know, Ammon was kind enough to go back and, there it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask if we could bring that up because I just saw it too.
Yeah, we're going to bring it up. Hold on.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, sorry. There we go. The partner of an entrepreneur shares all of the burdens, costs, hardships, but it's not their dream, so cannot get the same reward. And that's really something that I think is important to share about. And I'm not going to soapbox here, but I know that is definitely a challenge. And, you know, and even in my own marriage and my own personal life, you know, when I decided that I didn't want to do the corporate thing anymore, you know, I made decent money doing that. And so now when it's that we have to, you know, budget and we have to really think about, okay, can we, you know, do we want to take this vacation because now, you know, if we're choosing that, we're not choosing this other thing we have to do, and it all falls back into, you know, my husband's salary, because at this point in the business, a lot of what we generate goes right back into the business. You know, it's hard, and it does put a strain on him, he feels, because now he can't do, you know, he can't enjoy the lifestyle that he thought he was signing up for when we got married, and it's all falling back onto him. So I'm going to let you comment and get into this one.
Okay, you might want to take Ammon's thing down.
I will.
I think you got it blue boxed up there. Okay, there we go. Actually, I saw that, and I mean, that may be somewhere that you and I differ, because partners, we do enjoy each other's dreams, or especially the accomplishments. The biggest thing in the world for me is to see, you know, my husband have a fantastic day. And yeah, as much as it's great for him, it's also just as great for me because I get to be so proud of him, just the same way that you're proud of a child. So, sure, right now, they're doing the hardship, they're doing the money, you're doing the daily household chores and things, but, you know, especially the ones of us that are able to make it, that we hit that big solid dream, do you think for 1 second your partner is not going to be happy for you? They're not going to run around telling everybody that they know, hey, check it out, that is my baby. You know, yeah, no, they get to share that dream just as much as you do.
I think one thing, though, is to share the pain. Because my wife is way more risk averse than I am. So it's like with me, I'm like, oh, here comes a failure, but let's write it out to learn from it. And she's like, what? What? You said here comes a failure. Why are we going through this? I'm like, but see, we're making specific, these are different mistakes than last time. You know, and to her, it's painful. And I think some people, mistakes, especially public mistakes, you know, when press releases are involved and stuff, it's embarrassing. But to me, that same embarrassment keeps you from succeeding because you're like, well, we'll put out a partial press release. Well, no one's going to show up.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, there's pain and pleasure and everything, but yeah, they're going to be right there during that success and enjoying it as much as we are.
I wonder sometimes how much of that is learned versus, you know, nature versus nurture. You know, is that, and I'm please not trying to go back into the Jungian stuff, but my husband, for example, comes from, his parents are working class people. Nothing against them. They're awesome. They're lovely folks. And even me, my mom was a single parent family, and she was a teacher all her life. And here I am with this entrepreneurial aspiration, which seems to be kind of the odd one out. But anyways, in communicating with my husband in particular about what's going on, and I'll be all excited about something. Oh my God, I got this, this awesome thing that happened today, and he's just not getting it. It's just kind of like, that's great. Good for you, dear. Now what's for dinner? So I do think that there is some shared, you do ride the roller coaster together, but it's different when you're in the driver's seat versus in the passenger seat of that roller coaster ride. But it is fun to ride it together, and I wouldn't want it any other way. And so I'm hopeful that, when everything, we do reach more highs and all of that he'll be right there with me. So that's what we're looking forward to. All right. And another thing that I wanted to ask Delilah in particular, but gentlemen, feel free to jump in. It was Mr. Ammon Johns also put in the room before we got started that he was working on the 28-hour day project, which I totally understand that. I could use a few extra hours as well. And so I wanted to talk to Delilah some more. She mentioned the schedule that she does, but how do you fit it all in? How do you fit in, time for everybody? I know particularly in marketing and whatnot, we talk about, the best times to post, and there's all this scheduling that has to go on during the day, and if you want to optimize everything, well, I have to put my Twitter posts at this time, and I have to have my Google Plus ones on this time. And so, by the end of the day, after I've tried to fit everything else in, I'm frankly just pooped. And at that point, it's just like, I tell people all the time, I tend to fall asleep. I don't go to bed. I
like that.
So how do you fit everything in? What has worked for you, and what do you advise couples to do to try and fit it all in?
With the families always have oddball schedules, whether it be a work schedule, the kids' school schedules, ball practice, whatnot. So schedule them first. Honestly, pick out an amount of time and schedule them first. And then you can schedule all your other stuff around them. But that's absolutely family first, because there's only so many hours of the day that they're going to be home at the same time you are. You're going to be there all the time. So, and there's going to be times where you're home together, you're still working on your business. You don't have to be with them the whole time that they're here, but at least give them an hour, 2 hours here on this day, an hour, 2 hours here on that day. But schedule that time in with them first, and then fit in your other stuff around that. And even like there's days like the show that I do is at nighttime. So that day I will schedule in my grocery shopping during the morning, whatever little posting I got to do in the afternoon, schedule time with my daughter when she gets off the bus from school, and then do my show, and then do more posting afterwards. So you just manage around what you have available, but you make sure your family is in there first always.
That's good. Now, Dennis, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Are you a scheduler? Do you have a written down or a concrete schedule that you run by? I'm going to guess not.
And why do you guess not?
You just seem to, I think you have a schedule in your head. You know what I mean? Just in our conversations and just in talking with you I'm not, it's not a critical thing. But I'm just curious if it's, if you're the type that actually, down to the minutes plan schedules out.
No. No. I mean, yes, in order to have some semblance of, reasonable lifestyle, we've got multiple Google calendars for all the different kids, and that way I mean, we don't have to talk about every single item. We just put it in the right calendar, and it shows up on each other's phones, and we're able to, when we're sitting down to try and plan things, I know exactly what Cheryl's doing and where she is, and if there's a double schedule because I forgot to put something in and she scheduled during that time, well, it's just understood that that's my problem, not hers. You know, it's our job to get the information in there so that we can manage our lives. At the same time, I definitely live a very fluid life, and you know, things move and things happen, and I deal with it and adjust accordingly. But I'm not one that, like, okay, I'm gonna get up at this time and, you know, I'm gonna do these things. And I used to kind of be that way, but not so much anymore. And I don't know whether it's good, bad, or other. It just is.
I imagine it's you know, you and Cheryl seem to have worked it out for a way that works best for you. And I think that that's probably the more important thing, is that you guys have figured out what works for you and you stick with it. You know, and I still, you know, my husband and I still, you know, catch each other and have to check each other every now and then. Like when I went, I had told my husband for weeks that I was going to be in Boston yesterday, going to Eric's Angus event and some other things that I had to do. And then it was Monday night, and I said, don't forget, I'm going to the thing on Tuesday. And he said, did you put it on the calendar? And I'm like, but we talked about it like multiple times. Do we really need to put it on the calendar too? Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, it
All
wouldn't
right,
have even
fine,
been a
I'll
question.
put it on the calendar.
It wouldn't have been a question. Cheryl simply would have opened up her calendar on her phone and gone, it's not here, it's not happening. You know, I mean,
I'm working on that lesson.
you know, and that's what we tell the kids too. You know, okay, we'll move heaven and earth to get you somewhere, but you know, if you don't you have a phone. The second your teacher says you need to be here, you put it in your phone, in your calendar. We see it. If it's not there and we have something else going on, guess what? Your thing just might not be happening. And we have some kids that accept that and are actively engaged in it. And we have one daughter who flat out refuses. She also won't get on Google Plus because, well, we're on here. Not even. She wouldn't even let me set up Google Plus to back up her photos. She lost all her photos when her phone got wrecked, and I'm like, oh, there's an easy solution to that. And she's like, no. What? Whatever. Yeah. That particular daughter, if she died in a river from drowning, we would look for her upstream.
That's a good trait. I like that trait, though.
It is a good trait, and it takes her a long ways. I mean, believe me, that is the child that is going to dominate of our kids. Doesn't make it easy to be her parent. Oh.
You know what's funny? I think you know, I once described, and we talked about balance earlier, and it's sometimes, you know, like you said before, it's not so much about it being some kind of a you know, Ammon called it a static condition, you know, where everything is always perfectly aligned and just, oh. But I kind of look at it, you know, there used to be that circus act where there was a guy with these plates and he would spin them around on a stick, and it was how many could he get all 20 sticks or whatever spinning at the same time. And that's kind of what it's like. You know, it's running around trying to keep all of these plates spinning, and usually when he wins or whatever, when he's accomplished, some of them are starting to fall again. It's just that split second in time when they're all on the sticks together and they're all technically still rotating.
I plan to use that metaphor in an argument at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
Ignore that plate. Look at the other 19.
Well, have you ever noticed that plate spinner, as soon as he gets it done, They all do the same thing. Have you ever noticed this? They go like this, and they step back from the plates, and they just let them all fall.
Yeah.
Would you really try to catch them at that point? I wouldn't.
Somebody can get hurt.
Yeah.
But it's like they've accomplished it. They've won. They're done.
Yeah. I mean, we should be celebrating that moment instead of looking at these plates spinning. It's about the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Carmen, I want to make sure we find out from Dennis about the heel.
The what?
The stiletto pump that he had there. I mean,
shoes.
I saw glamorous just looking at it.
Well, and
We'll let you buy them. It's for charity. Come on.
You can buy these shoes Sunday night. They can
Manny,
be yours.
those would look fabulous on you.
Yes. And if I've told people before, if you want to pay extra for the shoes, you can actually tell me that I have to destroy them. That's all right too. But that's going to cost more.
That is really interesting. Well, we've got just a few more minutes, so I wanted to just look at a couple of comments on here. And Miss Laura Williams commented that she found when she started scheduling family time, she actually got more flexibility, and that's a really good comment. Also, there was I'm going to completely butcher the analogy, but there was the one about, you know, trying to put all the rocks in a bucket, you know, when you put the biggest rocks in first, and then you put the little rocks in, and then you can pour in the sand. If you try to just, you know, throw it all in there together, you're never going to fill up, you know, everything's going to spill out and it's going to be a complete mess. So I would have to agree that, you know, scheduling in, you know, figuring out which are your big rocks, and you can do this with your spouse, you know, and it's funny because I'm one of those people, you know, if things are tense around the house, and I'll say, dear, let's sit down and let's, you know, we're going to talk about this. And the other day I was, you know, a few weeks ago, I said, let's talk about our priorities. And what are some of the priorities that you have? Because I don't think we have the same priorities at this point. And he's like, this is a complete waste of time. I don't understand.
Can I give you a way to approach that may be a little better?
Go for it.
If your husband were to come up to you and go, now let's talk about priorities, you're going to take that offensively. I mean, seriously, that's the way I would have took it. Go up to him and go, hey, give me your thoughts on what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need to talk overall. It just makes me nervous.
It's saying we need
I don't
to
even
talk.
hear the rest.
Is going to scare somebody to death. You just need to reword the sentence. Come up to them, sit down beside them, give them a glass of tea, whatever, and go, hey, have you thought about this lately? What do you think we could do about that?
Yeah, I may have completely blown that. I had like my pencil and paper out. It was
Oh.
That sounds like an interrogation.
Do you have an orange light by any chance, like a beam that you could angle like right in the pupils?
You know,
Bring a pair of pliers, pull some teeth.
Oh man.
I think I may have been married the shortest out of everybody on this panel. So.
Well, then trust that we're telling you the truth. It's just
Yeah,
you get a much more relaxed conversation starter there than that.
In all fairness, I didn't just, you know, blindside him. We were sitting. It was after breakfast. You know, that's kind of our time anyway, particularly on the weekends, to just kind of relax a little bit together. And the kids, and it's not that the kids are. We just aren't as worried about them. They're watching TV or doing what they do, and so that's our typical time to just chit chat anyway. And I didn't just, you know, hey, what do you think? You know.
Okay, good. You worried me there for a minute. I was like, oh my god, she really did that.
The truth serum.
I mean, the point was, though, I mean, you know, my approach, and again, this probably speaks back to, you know, my type, is I'm rather methodical. You know, I tend to see things very much in kind of a black and white, in that there's a solution to things. You know, and that if I just think critically enough, then I can solve things. And he's not. He's just much more. Ironically, he's the Navy guy. You know, and is military and very good at his job, but he just doesn't see it as like that. You know, he would have rather had like a screaming fight than to have to sit down and methodically think through things like this. And I'm kind of a fight avoider, but you know, that's just the difference in the way that we problem solve. So we've got just a few more minutes left. Oh, I've got someone on here, or someone whose post is this of them walking in the shoes?
That's me. That's me.
Thank you.
All right. So if you want to see, you know, the shoe walking there, and Sandra said it sounds like I was creating a scene from CSI. I mean. Yeah, you know, I think I'm going to have to share with him that perhaps that was a misstep. But
maybe.
You know, you didn't use the truth serum. You know, it could have been worse.
You know, hey, it made sense to me at the time. So, you know, but I may not do it again. I'm all right with that. All right, we got a few more minutes, and I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to kind of do your last call to action. Where can we find you? What's coming up new for Dennis Deuce? You get to go first. Other than what we already know.
Other than me walking in these shoes tonight at 7 o'clock, Bandwidth Season 2 is starting May 21st. We're going to do a slightly new season style. Every other week we'll be doing music, and then in the alternating weeks, Christine DeGraff and myself are going to be doing a show about music on Google+, kind of what's going on, some tips on how to promote yourself if you are in the music industry. We'll interview some people who are power players in the music industry on Google+. So that'll be in the alternating weeks, and we'll probably play a video or two of the Bandwidth show. If you haven't seen Bandwidth, this is a 5-camera full mixing board, sounds like a recording studio quality live concert broadcast, Wednesdays at 7:02 p.m.
And why at 7:02?
Because every show that I produce starts on the deuce.
There we go. Very nice. All right, Delilah, your turn. What's new in your world? What should we be looking out for?
What you should be looking out for is I'm stepping out of bounds a little bit, and I'm gonna try to start a Small Biz Saturday HOA for a lot of our crafters, hand makers, candlestick makers, to get their information out there. Hopefully, starting the first one on May 24th. Start helping them work on that. And then, of course, I have the relationship coaching site, monogamous-temptress.com. And then I also help people with their building their engagement here on Google Plus at Engage My HOA.
Excellent. And certainly not least, Dr. Saint-Victor.
Yeah, so what I have coming up is Hypnotic Thoughts is a site that we're launching where we're focusing on mindfulness and the intersection of neuroscience and hypnosis. It's still in the vein of Mindful 360 in that the end goal is to get people to take some time to pay attention to their thought process, get in touch with their 8 cognitive functions. But we're introducing the added benefit of hypnosis, like true data-driven medical hypnosis.
Interesting. And so last, but I do want to remind everybody about the offer. If you go to, for the last time, Mindful 360, and you would like to have your Myers Briggs type indicator for yourself and one other person, they will be willing to do that for the low cost of $95. So you get 2 of you together. You can find out more information about how do you communicate, how do you perceive, how do you view the world. All you have to do is go there, tell them Carmen sent you, and they are going to hook you guys up and give you that opportunity. So real quickly, what we've got coming up next week on a Camel Jacket Chat, we're going to have a good friend of mine, Mr. Robert Dunbar, who is one of the top He's one of the top multi-level marketing experts in North Florida. He is one of the executive directors for Legal Shield, and has had to start over from scratch multiple times in different multi-level marketing product lines, and has risen to the top more than once. And so he's going to come on and share some of his secrets with those of you that are interested in multi-level marketing. And even if you're not necessarily interested in joining, I think, personally, I am not into multi-level marketing, but there's so much you can learn about marketing from these guys. If you watch how they do it, how they have a systematic approach to how everything is done and how it works, you can take a lot of those strategies and apply them to your own scenarios. So he will be on. We will be putting up that invitation shortly. So make sure that you join us next week for the Camel Jacket Chat. Is there anything else anybody wants to add?
Thank you for having us, Carmen.
All right. Well, we will be signing off. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next week on the Camel Jacket Chat.
See you next week.
Bye.
Take care.